Hello everyone, and welcome to my Blender Basic Object Mode tutorial. Here we'll learn about Blender's basic features on Object Mode in order to navigate the 3D space, as well as scale, rotate, and move objects around. On the bottom left, you can see every key in order to understand any action I'm taking to follow along. Please rewind the video if you miss anything. For starters, let's begin by moving around the 3D space and their keys. You'll only need to know 3 things to move. By pressing middle mouse button, you can go left and right to move around. By pressing middle mouse and shift, you can panel side to side in the selected view. Lastly, you can use the middle button mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out the view. Now that we know how to move around the 3D space, we're going to need objects to work on for our project. Set the view to the top left corner, and you'll see this box that says Add. By hovering over, select Mesh, and you'll see all the meshes available to us. Let's begin by selecting a cube and add it to the 3D view space. On the bottom left, we can see the object's properties where we can alter the object size as well as change the location and rotation on the X, Y, and Z axis. By right-clicking the 3D space, you won't have access to this panel again unless you delete and add the object once more. Now that our object is on the 3D space, we can start modifying it. By pressing T on your keyboard, you have access to the Move, Rotate, and the Scale tools. By selecting the Move tool, it allows you to move the object on the X, Y, and Z axis. Press Alt-G to reset its location. Up next is the Rotate tool, and like the Move tool, it allows you to rotate the object in all 3 axes, and each one has their own color. This one's being red for X, green for Y, and blue for Z axis. Lastly, we have the Scale tool. This one, like its brothers, can scale an object on all 3 axes. Personally, I prefer working on the Edit mode when it comes to scaling. In addition, we have the Transform tool that allows us to work with all the previous tools in one. So we can move, scale, and rotate the object at the same time. Now that we know how to modify our object and is all played with, it's going to be a pain to reset it manually, so we want it back to how it was. By pressing Alt-G, we reset the location, as mentioned previously, to the center of the 3D space, and the same goes for the rotation of the object, where by pressing Alt-R, its rotation is reset to how it was first spawned. The same goes for the scale, where pressing Alt-S, the object goes back to its original scale. Now these tools are useful, but can take some time by selecting each one individually. For that, we have shortcuts that allow us to speed things up. Press G to activate the Move tool, and then X, Y, or Z to restrain it to that axis. To activate the Rotate tool, press R and X, Y, or Z to rotate on the axis similar to the Move tool. To activate the Scale tool, press S, and the same can be done to restrain its axis as the previous tools. Now we might say that, with this, we already know plenty to start creating. But there's more. So far we've been working on the global state, but sometimes we need to work on the local state, and the same shortcuts can apply. By pressing G, R, or S, followed by double tapping X, Y, or Z, we can activate the local state and move the object according to where the object is facing. This can be useful in certain situations while we're modeling. This is just something that can come in handy, but most of the 90% of time, you'll be working on the global state. So far, we've only seen the Transform tools, but there are more information that need our attention as well. By pressing N, we can see the 3D space properties and the origin's location and rotation. For now, let's set our sight to the Item tab above. With this, we can see the object's properties. In my screen, you can see that my object is 2 meters. This is the size of my object. Always work with real-life dimensions for better workflow when creating a project. The object scale should always be one to be properly sized. Let's try it by watching an example. By scaling the object around, we can see that my dimensions changed. Now how can we turn my scale back to 1 and properly size it? Simple, by pressing Ctrl A, we can see this options where we can apply all 3 transforms. In this case, we'll try the scale and see that our scale dimensions change to 1, meaning that our objects will be displayed properly for game engines. We talked about many shortcuts, but the most important one that you'll use 100% of the time is the undo. Let's change some values on our objects as example. Now to go back to previous action, set your sight to the bottom left, and by pressing Ctrl Z, as that's our undo shortcut. Blender will keep track on how many times this action can be done. It's also a good idea to either save the project often or keep a duplicate of the object itself in case the total of undos is not enough to where you want to be. To change that, we can go to Edit, Preferences, System, and in Undo Steps, we can see how many steps we set Blender to have history of. This can be changed to any number of steps. As you can see, I set mine to 256 steps. I recommend you play with it for a while and try to set it to a reasonable number. In my own case, I found that 256 steps is enough for me to work with since I have the habit of playing around and looking for those happy mistakes. Lastly, we need to know how our objects spawn in our world. Set your sight in the middle of the object and you'll see an orange dot. This is the object's origin, and as you see, there's a circle. That's called the 3D cursor where our object will set its origin. The origin is important to know, since based on its location on the world, our object can be scaled and rotated. Let's see an example. I'll spawn another object, and you'll see its origin set on the 3D cursor. Now delete the new object and select the previous object. We can see if we press R to rotate, a line is set visible, aiming from our mouse cursor to the object origin. The same happens to move and scale. To set the object's origin back to the center of our world, for that, right-click on your mouse and set your sight to Set Origin. Here you'll find an option called Set Origin to 3D Cursor. As you can see, the dot moved to the 3D cursor. Now try to rotate and scale the object. We can see that now it's rotating from the spot where our origin is set. That's all pretty much what you need to know about our Blender Basic Object Mode. I hope you found this video useful, and if I missed anything, please leave a comment down below for more tips and tricks for other beginners to learn, as well as any tips for a future video. For now, the next video, we will talk about Blender Basics Edit Mode, where we'll see its tools and everything we can use and do with our object. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next video. This has been Blender Howl, and I'll catch you in the next full moon. Take care.